What if the person you trusted most didn't just leave you, but stole your future, your child's security, and even your voice? This isn't fiction. For Orchid, it started with a text at daycare, and it ended in a courtroom showdown that would expose lies, betrayal, and a conspiracy bigger than anyone imagined.
Welcome back, everyone. Today's story isn't just about betrayal. It's about strength, survival, and the fight for justice. Imagine losing your partner, your savings, and almost your child in one brutal move, and still finding the courage to fight back. If you love gripping real-life stories that keep you on edge, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you never miss the next one.
The daycare smelled faintly of crayons and disinfectant, a mix of innocence and order. Children's laughter spilled down the bright hallway, their tiny sneakers squeaking against polished floors as parents gathered coats, backpacks, and lunchboxes. I had always found comfort in this place, a bubble of routine in my unpredictable life as a freelance editor. But that afternoon, as I reached for the clipboard to sign my son Finn out, the safe rhythm of my world shattered. My phone buzzed in my bag, sharp and insistent. Absent-mindedly, I pulled it out, balancing the pen in my other hand. I expected a reminder from my mother in Maine, or maybe a message from a client. What I saw instead made my heart stop mid-beat. Moving to Lisbon with Abigail. Savings transferred to my account. Good luck with rent. Just 3 lines. Clinical, detached, efficient. Isaac's words. My husband of 8 years. The man who once whispered promises under the Boston skyline, reducing our life together to a text message. The pen trembled in my grip, smudging my signature across the daycare log. My vision blurred as if the letters on the page were dissolving. Finn tugged at my sleeve, oblivious to the earthquake splitting my chest open. "Mommy, did you bring my dinosaur snacks?" His eyes lit up, full of joy, full of trust. He was only 5, too young to understand betrayal, too innocent to grasp the cruelty tucked into Isaac's words. I forced my lips into something resembling a smile. "Of course, sweetheart," I said, my voice catching, though I doubted he noticed. His small hand slid into mine, warm and grounding. I clung to it like a lifeline as the chaos inside me threatened to pull me under. Around me, life carried on as though nothing had happened. Teachers called out cheerful goodbyes, parents zipped coats, and kids laughed as they chased one another toward the exit. The ordinary joy of the daycare was suddenly unbearable. It mocked me, a chorus of normality against the hurricane roaring inside my chest. Isaac's message replayed in my mind, each word cutting deeper. Lisbon, Abigail, his administrative assistant, the one with the too perfect handwriting and the always ready smile, the one who lingered a little too long when she handed him files. My gut had whispered suspicions, but I buried them under trust, under the hope that marriage vows still meant something. Now, in a single text, my worst fear was not only confirmed, but weaponized. And the money? Our money. Every penny we'd saved over the years, scraped together from late nights of my freelance projects and his steady marketing salary. Gone. Transferred. Erased. Rent was due in 3 days. Finn's preschool tuition loomed. Groceries, gas, everything suddenly became numbers I couldn't add up. My fingers shook so badly that I nearly dropped the phone. Somehow, I typed back 3 words. Thanks for the update. Sarcasm? Defiance? Or maybe a desperate shield, a way to hide the hurricane of fear and fury exploding inside me. My thumb hovered over send, and then it was done. A whisper into the void, swallowed by his silence. Finn swung his backpack, chattering about dinosaurs and asking if Daddy would make mac and cheese tonight. His voice was pure music, cutting through the static in my head. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Daddy's on a trip," I managed, each word a lie that scraped raw on my tongue. "How about pizza instead?" "Pizza!" Finn cheered, bouncing with excitement. His joy, unfiltered and unshaken, anchored me. If Isaac thought his betrayal would break me instantly, he hadn't accounted for this. Our son's laughter, the small but steady pulse of hope in a 5-year-old's heart.
Outside, the late autumn air bit against my skin as we walked to the car. The Boston sky stretched gray and heavy, mirroring the storm inside me. I buckled Finn into his seat, his little voice humming to himself, unaware that our world had just tilted off its axis. For a moment, I leaned against the car, closing my eyes. At 37, I had built my life around stability for Finn, a cozy apartment, predictable routines, the warmth of home. I had sacrificed career ambition to freelance, believing Isaac would carry the financial load while I nurtured the family we built together. I believed we were a team. I believed in him. Now my belief lay shattered at my feet. Isaac had not only left us, he had stripped us bare. I climbed into the driver's seat, gripping the wheel with white knuckles. My phone buzzed again, and I flinched. Maybe he'd texted back. Maybe this was some cruel mistake, but it was only a calendar notification. Rent due in 3 days. The words blurred through my tears. Finn's chatter filled the car. Did you know T-Rex had tiny arms? Daddy said so. I bit down hard on my lip, willing myself not to cry. Yes, sweetheart, Daddy's right. My voice was steady, even as my heart fractured into pieces sharp enough to draw blood. The drive home was a blur of red lights and gray streets. Every corner of Boston felt different now, as though Isaac's text had altered the geography. We passed the coffee shop where he once brought me lattes after sleepless nights with Finn, the bookstore where we'd browsed for Finn's bedtime stories. Each place now a ghost, a reminder of promises broken. Back at the apartment, Finn ran to his cartoons, his laughter echoing through the small living room. I stood in the kitchen, staring at my phone, Isaac's words still glowing on the screen. Moving to Lisbon with Abigail. Savings transferred to my account. Good luck with rent. I whispered the words aloud, as if saying them might make them real. Instead, they sounded foreign, like lines from a play I hadn't agreed to perform. For years, I told myself Isaac was tired, stressed, distracted, that his late nights and secretive phone calls were part of his job, that his mother's sharp words about my parenting were just her way, and his silence was not betrayal. I convinced myself love was enough, trust was enough, marriage was enough. But now, faced with the cold cruelty of his text, I saw it all clearly. The late nights, the lies, the silences, they weren't cracks. They were exit signs, and Isaac had finally followed them. I opened my laptop, fingers trembling as I logged into our bank account. The numbers stared back like a cruel joke. Our joint savings account empty, $142,731 gone in a single transfer. Our checking account, $347.12. Rent, $2,200. Due in 3 days. My stomach twisted, bile rising in my throat. Isaac hadn't just left. He'd calculated, planned, stripped us bare with surgical precision. From the living room, Finn's laughter rang out, a fragile shield against the storm. I pressed my hand to my chest, forcing my breaths steady. I couldn't break. Not here, not now, not in front of him. I picked up the phone and called my parents. The sound of my mother's voice cracked the dam I was holding back. "Mom," I whispered, my throat tight. "Isaac's gone. He took everything." Without hesitation, she said, "We'll cover your rent. We're driving down tomorrow. You're not alone, Orchid." Her words wrapped around me like a lifeline. But even as relief washed through me, I knew parental support wouldn't be enough. Isaac's betrayal wasn't just financial. It was personal. And it wasn't just about surviving the next rent check. It was about protecting Finn, protecting myself, and finding a way to fight back. I hung up, wiped my eyes, and looked toward my son, his small frame curled on the couch, dinosaurs dancing across the TV screen. My heart hardened. Isaac thought he had written the final chapter of our story. He thought a single text would erase me, but he was wrong. This was only the beginning. I used to believe our love began like a well-edited sentence. Clean, confident, inevitable. We met at the Midtown Publishing Summit in New York. A maze of glass-walled conference rooms and aggressively poured coffee. I was 30 then, a senior acquisitions editor, known for line-by-line precision and the soft spot I hid for debut authors with raw voices. He was the keynote's golden boy, the marketing director, with a grin people said could close a deal faster than a discount code. Isaac, crisp suit,
Handwritten thank you notes. Eye contact that felt like flattery shaped into a promise. He found me after a panel on voice versus market. I'd argued, stubbornly, that a book could create its own market if given the right devotion. He countered that devotion without distribution died in the dark. Maybe, he said afterward, shadowing my path toward the escalators, we should test your theory together. You bring the devotion, I'll bring the light. A line, yes, but it landed like a possibility. I laughed. He noticed, and the conference, with its chatter and badges and tote bags, narrowed to a single focal point, a man who seemed to see both my ambition and my weariness, and wanted to carry one while he admired the other. Our first date happened that night, not in a glittering restaurant, but in a bodega that smelled of oranges and printer toner. He insisted good beginnings belonged to simple places, so the story doesn't burn itself out too soon, he said, pressing a paper cup of hot chocolate into my hands. We walked 7 blocks south, trading book titles and childhood scars like currency. He told me about his father's bankruptcy when he was 12, the way debt notices had stacked on the kitchen counter like tombstones. I told him about my mother's thrift store miracles and my father's quiet hands repairing everything that broke, except his own silence. We didn't kiss that night. We didn't need to. I went back to my hotel, certain I would spend a long time learning this man. The months that followed moved with the ease of an outline writing itself. He sent lilies when one of my authors hit the list, left post-it pep talks on my office monitor when sales meetings loomed. His thoughtfulness was aerodynamic, sleek gestures designed to reduce the drag of ordinary life. I flew to Boston for interviews. He met my trains with takeout cartons and the grin that would become my signal for safety. I remember one late February when the city slushed into itself and we were trapped inside his apartment. He read the first 50 pages of a messy manuscript out loud, doing voices, teasing plot holes, turning the couch into a workshop. I fell in love the way snow accumulates, quietly. Then suddenly, the ground altered. We married by the Charles River on a day clear as glass. My mother wept. My father danced a little, stiffly, like the music was a language he didn't speak, but was trying to learn for me. Isaac kissed my palms before he kissed my mouth at the altar, the kind of theatrical tenderness people remember. The photos look like proof. Sincerity frozen in good light. We went to Provincetown for a weekend honeymoon and splurged on oysters we couldn't afford because that's what newlyweds do when they believe in the future. The future came fast. A promotion opened at a Boston house I'd coveted since grad school. Take it, Isaac said. I'll move. He did, and with an efficiency I admired. Subletting his place, finding ours, negotiating the condo price as though bargaining with life itself. We built routines like scaffolding, Sunday farmers market, weeknight shared cooking, his skillet patience, my salad improvisations, our twin desks set corner to corner so we could be alone together. Looking back, there were already fissures. He checked his phone at dinner with the casual ownership of someone who believed time owed him interest. He worked late, always for a launch, an author dinner, a metric. But ambition is a flattering mirror. I looked at him through it and saw our reflections shining. When Finn arrived, the world rekeyed itself. Sound got sharper. Sleep turned to mist, and love expanded until the house felt too small for it. And then the shadows came. Postpartum depression doesn't announce itself with villain music. It slips a fog across sunlight and calls it honest weather. I fed Finn, I bathed him, I sang the old folk songs my mother had hummed into my bones, but some nights the walls pressed close and I whispered apologies to a baby who blinked at me with unblameable eyes. My therapist called it an illness. Isaac called it a phase. He was kind in the ways that didn't cost him time. Grocery deliveries, pediatrician reminders, an extra blanket folded. But at 3 a.m., when the floorboards creaked like questions, he slept hard and pure, the way people sleep who believe they will be caught if they fall. His mother began visiting more often then, her perfume a sharp floral that lingered hours after she left. A widow who wore her grief like a medal. She had a talent for turning concern into verdict. Babies need structure, she'd say, smoothing Finn's blanket with judgmental efficiency. Mothers do too. I learned to measure breaths around her. I learned that Isaac had different registers. One for me, wry and warm. One for her, deferential and hungry. The first time she suggested we hire a night nurse, I almost said yes, but her reasons were not mercy, they were management. Orchid has sensitivity, she told Isaac in front of me, as if I were a complicated appliance. We should compensate. I smiled an exhausted smile and said we were fine. Isaac didn't contradict her. He didn't defend me either. I told myself neutrality was kindness. Later I learned neutrality is often just rehearsal for absence. When Finn turned 1 and the fog began to thin, we recalibrated. I took a step back from the imprint I'd been building. Just for now, I said. I'll freelance until daycare is a little less financially theoretical. Isaac cheered the plan, framed it as teamwork. We're a portfolio, he said, diversified against risk. He was persuasive and not wrong. The first months of freelancing tasted like freedom. Coffee at home, manuscripts spread across the dining table, Finn napping in a sun patch like a cat. Money got tighter, yes, but we used phrases like bridge period and ramp back up. When the Cheching account skimmed too close to empty, Isaac found a bonus, or a credit card float, or a way to turn scarcity into an adventure. We're scrappy, he'd say, kissing my forehead. Scrappy wins. Scrappy met resistance in the unromantic places. Bills, daycare rate hikes, the slow death of an aging dishwasher. I worked nights, he worked later nights. The marital ledger filled with IOUs. I'll take the morning if you take the bedtime. I'll call the plumber if you handle the insurance. I'll apologize to your mother if you attend mine's birthday. We paid some. We defaulted on others. And the phone became his second spine, attached, essential, bending his posture toward a somewhere that was not us. The first time I noticed a name I didn't recognize, it was because of the handwriting. Abigail's notes were precise, almost ornamental, the loops of her G's like choreographed dips. She'd started as a contractor, then saved a campaign Isaac said would have cratered without her. He praised her with the generous joy of a mentor, then with the almost devotional admiration of a man who had found a mirror for his competence. I brushed it off. Attraction, I believed then, could be unthreatening as long as it stayed in daylight and inside jokes died at the office door. Besides, Isaac had a way of turning attention into currency. He invested wherever returns were highest. The tiny lies arrived disguised as logistics. An extra client dinner, a rescheduled date night because a VIP went sideways. The first suspicious credit card charge I found was at a restaurant with a tasting menu that cost more than our monthly grocery budget. He said it was a client, an emergency, an apology already offered by his boss. I wanted to believe him, and so I did. Belief is not free. It accrues interest you pay later. There are scenes I revisit now, not for the pain, but for the clues I edited out. The afternoon we assembled Finn's Triceratops bookshelf and Isaac's phone lit up 4 times in a row. He set it face down, smile fixed like a prop. The night we agreed to no screens in the bedroom, and his buzzed on the dresser anyway, a little moth thudding soft against the lamp. The morning his mother dropped by with croissants and a printout of Montessori research and told me conversationally that stability for a child includes stability of income, her gaze like a ruler measuring my worth. You're talented, she added, gracious as a blade, but talent is a luxury for mothers. Isaac kissed her cheek. I told myself it was easier not to make it a fight. Still, we had golden days, real ones, not reconstructed from nostalgia. Sundays when we turned the living room into a dinosaur dig, Finn roaring with a plastic T-Rex in each fist. Afternoons when Isaac and I cooked to old soul playlists, moving around each other like a dance we'd practiced for years. There were jokes only we knew, glances that still stitched me up when I felt frayed. That is the cruelty of stories that end badly. They contain sincere good chapters. The first Lisbon hint arrived as an architectural magazine folded under a marketing deck. European expansion case study, he said, tapping the cover without meeting my eyes. Hypothetical. I believed him. I was busy comparing preschool wait lists and revising a memoir about recovery and sunlight. He was busy being indispensable. We shared a bed, a child, a calendar. It felt like enough until the day it wasn't. One night after Finn finally surrendered to sleep and the dishwasher hummed its cranky lullaby, I found Isaac on the balcony, the cold biting through his t-shirt, his phone lighting his face into a stranger's. You okay? I asked, hugging myself against the wind. He slid the phone into his pocket, gaze jumping like a record with a scratch. Work, he said, always work. Then he reached for me, and I let him because reassurance is a language, and I was hungry. If you ask me when the foundation truly cracked,
I will tell you it happened in inches, not with a bang. It was 1,000 small edits to our manuscript. Adverbs swapped, commas misplaced, whole paragraphs cut overnight. I kept trying to proofread us act to sense. He kept writing ahead without telling me the plot. By the time the earthquake arrived in a daycare hallway with a text that landed like a verdict, the ground had already been shifting for years. When I look back on those early days now, I resist the urge to rename everything a warning. Love deserves its true nouns. We were in love. We were also inattentive, and proud, and tired, and a little enchanted with our reflection in each other's eyes. He needed to be the man who escaped the scarcity of his childhood. I needed to be the woman who made devotion profitable. We were both riding towards salvation, and somewhere along the way, his route found another character with precise handwriting and a passport. Mine found a child who said "mama" like a spell that could haul me back from the dark. If there is a single moment that foreshadowed the end, it is this: the day his mother stood in our kitchen, her fingertips resting against the marble like a claim, and said, softly, almost sweetly, "Structure of love, Orchid. Gifts are not." I washed my hands longer than necessary and stared at the suds slipping down the drain, thinking about the hundreds of gifts Isaac had given me: flowers, notes, surprises, and the days lately when his presence felt structured around absence. I wanted to ask her what she thought her son was giving. I didn't. I dried my hands and told Finn to pick a book. He chose the one about the little dinosaur who loses his way and finds it again by following the moon. We read it under a lamp we'd bought on a rash, happy afternoon, and I remembered that love, like editing, is not just about cutting what doesn't work. It is about choosing what must remain. I tucked Finn in and smoothed his hair and told myself our story could still be saved with devotion and time. I was wrong, but wrongness, I would learn, can be a beginning too.
The first cracks in my marriage weren't earthquakes. They were whispers, barely audible shifts in rhythm, pauses too long to be casual, details so small I convinced myself they were harmless. Looking back now, I see them for what they were, omens. But at the time, I stacked excuses like sandbags, patching over the leaks with trust, habit, and hope. It started with the late nights. At first, they made sense. Isaac was ambitious, driven by the marketing world's relentless deadlines. He loved the adrenaline of a pitch, the rush of landing a client. "It's the hustle," he'd say, loosening his tie as he walked in past midnight, his smile carrying the charm that had first captivated me. I told myself it was temporary, that once he climbed the next rung, things would calm down. But promotions only fueled the fire. There was always another client, another dinner, another emergency meeting. One evening, I called his office landline after Finn had gone to bed, wanting simply to hear his voice. The receptionist answered, hesitation in her tone. "Oh, Isaac left a while ago." My heart sank. But when he came home an hour later with flowers, I convinced myself I'd misheard her. He was attentive that night, almost too attentive. Later, I'd realize flowers often bloom in the soil of guilt. The credit card charges came next. Small at first. Meals at restaurants I'd never heard of, rideshare trips across the city at odd hours. When I asked, he brushed it off as client expenses. "I'll be reimbursed," he said casually, sliding his phone away as I pressed for details. He was smooth, persuasive, practiced. I wanted to believe him. Belief, after all, is easier than confrontation when you're already exhausted from parenting, from balancing freelance deadlines, from trying to keep your world upright. Then there was Abigail. She was everything I wasn't at that time. Polished, efficient, always put together. Isaac praised her often, first in casual mentions, "She saved me on that presentation," or "Abigail's the reason the campaign launched on time." Later, it became stories about her sense of humor, her resourcefulness, the way she just got it. I tried to be happy for him, tried to believe he'd found a competent assistant who made his work life smoother. But late at night, when Finn finally slept and the apartment echoed with silence, I'd feel an unease creeping in. Why was her name in his stories more often than mine? I remember one night in particular. I was working on a manuscript, the glow of my laptop soft against the kitchen counter. Isaac came in late, loosened tie, phone buzzing in his hand. He laughed at something on the screen before quickly tucking it away. "What's funny?" I asked lightly. He kissed my forehead and said, "Just a work meme Abigail sent." He said it casually, but my stomach twisted. Since when did assistants and bosses trade memes late at night? And then there were his mother's visits. She seemed to sense the widening gap before I did. Each time she came over, her criticisms sharpened. "Finn needs more structure," she'd say, eyeing the toys scattered across the living room. Or, "Isaac works so hard. You should try to make things easier for him." Her words landed like stones, subtle accusations disguised as advice. I wanted Isaac to defend me, to remind her that raising Finn was a full-time job in itself, that freelancing at midnight was not a hobby, as she liked to call it. But he never did. He smiled tightly, changed the subject, or worse, agreed with her by his silence. That silence grew heavier each time, pressing me down like a weight I couldn't shake. The Lisbon clue arrived disguised as ambition, a glossy travel guide tucked inside his briefcase, its spine bent as if it had been read more than once. When I asked, he chuckled. "Research. The firm's thinking of expanding into Europe. Nothing certain." I nodded, relieved, and pushed away the flicker of suspicion. Expansion was good, right? Growth meant stability. But part of me remembered how he lingered over the pages, his eyes scanning the pictures like he was imagining himself there. Not us, him. One afternoon, I found a receipt tucked into his jacket pocket from a boutique hotel in the city. He explained it away as a client dinner that ran late, a missed train, a harmless overnight stay. I wanted to press further, but Finn was tugging at my shirt, asking for juice, and I let the moment slip away. Later, alone, I sat on the edge of our bed with the receipt in my hand, telling myself it was nothing. After all, he'd been tired lately. Maybe he just didn't want to drive home. Maybe he was telling the truth. But maybe is the language of denial, and I was fluent. Still, not everything was bleak. There were moments when he seemed like the man I married, the one who left handwritten notes in my work bag, who surprised me with my favorite tea, who danced with Finn around the kitchen to old Motown records. Those glimpses made the doubts easier to dismiss. How could someone who built dinosaur forts on the living room rug with our son also be the man who betrayed us? The contradictions kept me bound to hope. I ignored the way his phone was always face down. I ignored the extra cologne lingering when he came home late. I ignored the way he avoided my eyes when I asked about long-term plans. I ignored because admitting the truth meant facing a storm I wasn't ready to weather. My therapist once told me that our minds protect us from truths we're not ready to accept. Maybe that's what I was doing, protecting myself, protecting Finn, protecting the illusion that we were still a family on solid ground. But the signs were there, etched into the margins of our days. I just refused to read them. Because once you start reading, you can't unsee the words. And the words were spelling betrayal long before Isaac pressed send on that text. Boston peeled past my windshield in dull grays and brake lights. Every block, a metronome ticking down to rent day. I drove home on muscle memory, fingers clenched at 10 and 2 like the steering wheel was the only sturdy thing left. In the back seat, Finn narrated a dinosaur soap opera. T-Rex says sorry, but not really sorry to Stegosaurus. And I clung to the sound as if his small voice could stitch the day back together. Inside our apartment, the heat kicked on with a sigh. I set Finn up with his cartoon and a cup of apple slices, kissed the top of his head, and went to the kitchen, where the laminate counter had hosted 1,000 tiny family wars. Grocery math, deadline triage, bedtime treaties. My laptop lived there, the hinge notched with little crescent scratches from years of opening and closing hope. I flipped it open. The screen bloomed to life. My hands didn't feel like mine. Username, password. The bank's logo pulsed in a shade of blue designed to inspire trust. The page took a heartbeat longer than usual to load. And in that heartbeat, I let myself imagine there had been a mistake. A fat-fingered clerk, a glitch, a bad dream that would apologize and reverse itself. The numbers arrived like verdicts. Joint savings, family goals, $0. Recent activity, transfer, outgoing, $142,731. Destination, redacted, personal account, authorized user, Isaac last name, date, 10:42 a.m. I sat down without meaning to. The chair legs screeched. Finn called, "You okay, Mommy?" And I made a sound that was supposed to be yes. My eyes slid to checking, joint checking, $347.12. Upcoming auto payments, rent, $2,200, due 3 days. Daycare, $780, due 8 days. The page held still, and everything else moved. A hollow pressure swelled behind my ribs, the kind that once came with panic attacks in the worst weeks after Finn was born. I placed both palms flat on the counter, feeling the cheap laminate's coolness. Breathe in 4, hold 4, out 6. I could hear my therapist's voice like a metronome of mercy.
Another click opened the transaction detail. The bank had the audacity to decorate theft with confetti of compliance. Note, transfer initiated online by authorized account holder. Joint accounts allow unilateral transfer. Call 1-800-4-questions, like someone had typed a shrug into policy. I clicked chat with a representative. A soft ding. "Hello, Orchid. How may I help you today?" arrived with a smiling stock avatar that looked like she believed in birthdays and pensions. I typed, "My husband moved our entire savings out of our joint account without my consent this morning. We are still married. I need to reverse it." The typing bubble appeared, disappeared, returned. "I'm so sorry you're experiencing this," she wrote. "So was sorry, like condolences for weather. Because both names are on the account, either party may transfer funds. We can file a dispute if there is fraud, but this would not meet that criteria. Would you like to place a note on the account and change online access?" I stared at the line. This would not meet that criteria, and felt something inside me stand up. "Place the note," I wrote. "Freeze online access. New password. Text me a one-time code for any changes, and remove his email." My wrists steadied as I typed. It was a thimble against a flood, but it was also a door locking. "Done," she replied. "Is there anything else?" "Yes," I wanted to say. "I want you to put decency back into his chest and my money back into my son's future." But the bank did not sell decency. From the living room, "Mommy, commercials are loud." I turned the volume down and kissed Finn's cheek when I passed him. He smelled like apples and shampooed. His eyelashes made small parentheses on his face when he blinked. "Pizza later?" I asked, and he whooped, already negotiating toppings. "Green ones." He meant peppers, the compromise we invented to feel like good people. Back in the kitchen, I opened a blank document titled Emergency, Isaac. My fingers found their muscle memory, the work posture, spine of a senior editor who knows that chaos surrenders to lists. Immediate to-dos. Screenshot all bank balances and transfers. Done. Change passwords on bank, email, cloud storage, phone carrier. Remove Isaac's devices from shared accounts. Apple ID, streaming, smart home. Pull last 12 months of statements, bank/credit. Call landlord, explain payment timing. Call daycare, confirm grace period. Call mom and dad, research family and divorce attorneys. Inventory documents in Isaac's desk. Tax returns, pay stubs. Breathe, feed child, sleep if possible. I started with screenshots. Bank pages, transfer details, the date and timestamps. I saved each file with names like 2025-09-25, savings 00.00 PNG. Precision is armor. Then email passwords, two-factor codes pinging my phone until the haptics felt like an arrhythmia. I removed Isaac's device from our shared cloud, watched the icon ghost itself out of our digital family. A petty victory flickered through me. One fewer aperture into our lives. The phone rang. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail, then played it with the volume almost off. The bank again. A polite confirmation of security changes. The neutral bureaucracy of safety. I called the landlord next. "Will be 3 days late," I said, laying the truth bare. The silence on the other end calibrated itself into compassion. "You've been great tenants," she said. "Don't worry. Just keep me posted." I wrote Grace 5 days on the list and underlined it like a prayer. Daycare. I kept the explanation clinically short. Family emergency, payments in process. Because you don't tell the people who love your child for money that the floor under your life has disappeared. "Of course," the director said gently. "Take the time you need." I exhaled and crossed daycare off the list. Calling my parents felt like opening a window in a burning room. My mother answered on the second ring. I didn't make it 2 sentences in before my voice broke. She didn't fill the space with cautionary tales or "couldn't you have scenes?" "We'll cover your rent," she said, no flourish. "We're on the road at dawn." My father got on, and his quiet syllables, "We've got you," were a plank and a flood. I added "wire from mom" to the list.
then stared at the line until it stopped blurring. The front door of my mind swung, and Isaac's mother walked in uninvited. Her voice like a polished edge. Structure is love, Orchid. Gifts are not gifts, as though he had gifted me money by not gambling it sooner. I felt heat creep up my neck. Across the room, Finn shouted at the TV, "No, no, T-Rex, share." The universe had an editor's sense of irony. I opened our joint email and searched for Lisbon. Outspilled newsletters, a hotel promo, a confirmation for a travel guide purchased last week. The order history listed an address I didn't recognize. I copied it to the document. Then I searched Abigail and found 3 calendar invites, early breakfasts labeled deck rehearsal, and a Sunday walk and talk that had repeated for months. Patterns are evidence wearing jeans. I pulled a legal pad from the drawer. Yellow paper, blue lines, the comfort of analog. Across the top I wrote, money. Below it, 2 columns, incoming and outgoing. Incoming looked like a starving city. My overdue invoice for a developmental edit, $1,200, a delayed royalty check from a short-term contract, $400, a maybe from a client who loved to say, circling back. Outgoing was a marching band of obligations: rent, daycare, groceries, utilities, the breaks I promised the mechanic I'd schedule, the sneakers Finn had blown the toes out of. I sharpened a pencil and did the math. We could make 1 week clean if I collected the invoice today and my parents' wire arrived tomorrow. 2 weeks if I returned the things in the hall closet, still tagged for a party we never threw. A month if I swallowed pride and took that copy polish gig from the tech startup that treated people like nouns. Survival is often conjugated in compromises. Finn padded into the kitchen, socked feet sliding on tile. "Can I help?" he asked, seeing my pile of papers. He carried his toy Stegosaurus like a briefcase. I smiled with more sincerity than I felt. "You are helping," I said, kissing his forehead. "You are being 5. That helps the most." He accepted this like a contract and went back to stack block towers, and I loved him in the way that rearranges your molecules. The sky tilted toward evening. I preheated the oven and slid in a frozen pizza like alchemy. Cardboard to comfort in 12 minutes. While it baked, I opened Isaac's desk drawer. Receipts. Old business cards, a cracked fountain pen that had once written me love notes. Beneath a sheaf of expense reports, I found our last year's tax folder, W-2s, 1099s, a list of deductions in Isaac's precise block handwriting. I photographed everything, my phone camera shutter sound clicking like a metronome. At the bottom, a sticky note with a bank name I didn't recognize and a 9-digit number. I added it to Emergency Isaac with a sting of triumph that tasted like grit. The oven beeped. I cut the pizza into imperfect geometry and carried slices to the coffee table. We ate picnic style because sometimes rituals must yield to necessity. Finn told me about a kid named Arlo who could burp the alphabet. I laughed, truly, and tucked the sound away for later when the house would yawn into quiet. After bath and books and bargaining, 3 pages, not 5. Okay, 2 more because you did dino voice. I watched Finn sleep for a minute longer than necessary, the way mothers do when they need proof that something in the world is still right. At the kitchen table again, I opened a new tab and typed, "Best divorce attorney, Boston emergency orders, child support, asset freeze." The results unfurled, a parade of high-contrast headshots and slogans about fighting for families. I skimmed reviews, noted names mentioned twice, 3 times. One kept appearing attached to words like fierce and calm and does not blink. Cecilia Hart, family law. I copied the number. 10 at night wasn't the time to call, but tomorrow morning would be. I added "Call Cecilia" to the top of the list and boxed it with a heavy hand. My phone lit with a new text. For a second, I thought him and felt the old reflex to brace. It was my mother. "Leaving at 6, ETA noon. We're bringing soup. Sleep if you can." I typed back a heart and a thank you, and maybe lie. "We're okay." I turned off lights until only the lamp above the table glowed, a small circle of gold bravely holding back the dark. I read the list once more, like a litany, like a spine. Screenshot, passwords, landlord, daycare, parents, attorney, documents. Breathe. It was not victory. It was not even safety. But it was a shape, and shapes are what you draw when the map has been stolen. On the counter, the bank tab still waited, blue and bright as betrayal. My cursor hovered over the logout button. Something mean and practical inside me whispered, he planned this. He expected you to fold. I did not fold. I clicked download full statement history instead. In the doorway to the hall, I paused. The apartment was quiet except for the heater's throat and the refrigerator's small huff. Past the bathroom, Finn's soft snore rose and fell. I pressed my palm to the flat of the door as if I could bless this rectangle of wood, this barrier against the world. Good luck with rent, Isaac had written, like a man tossing a coin into the hat of a stranger he would never walk again. But I knew something tonight that I had not known in the daycare hallway. Luck had very little to do with it. Rent gets paid by lists and wire transfers and parents who drive down at dawn. Justice, if I could find it, would get paid for by screenshots and a lawyer who does not blink. I turned off the last lamp the dark held. I held back harder. Tomorrow, I would call Cecilia. Tonight, I would sleep beside my son in case the night pressed too close. The savings were gone. The ground was not.
The morning sun slanted through the blinds in pale stripes, dust motes dancing in the beam as if the world hadn't shifted under my feet. Finn's tiny body was curled against mine in bed, his toy stegosaurus clutched tight under his chin. I lay awake long before he stirred, staring at the ceiling, rehearsing conversations that hadn't happened yet. Isaac's name was a pulse in my chest. Lisbon, Abigail, empty accounts. My husband had detonated our life with one text, and yet I still wanted to look him in the eyes and hear him say it, to know that it was real, not a glitch, not a misunderstanding, not a nightmare that would dissolve at dawn. After breakfast, pancakes from a box, because it was all I had the energy for, I dressed Finn for daycare. He tugged at his dinosaur backpack straps with a grin. "Mommy, can T-Rex come today?" he asked, holding up the worn plastic toy. I smiled and nodded, brushing his hair back. Of course, T-Rex is always welcome. His innocence wrapped around me like armor. I kissed his forehead and told myself, hold it together until drop-off, fall apart later. At the daycare, teachers greeted him by name. He bolted toward his friends, dinosaur in hand, leaving me standing with an ache so sharp I almost doubled over. I forced a smile, waved, and walked back to the car. The moment I closed the door, the facade cracked. My breaths came shallow, my hands trembling on the steering wheel. Today, I decided I would confront Isaac. He wouldn't vanish like a ghost, not without answers. He owed me that much. He owed Finn that much.
Boston streets blurred past as I drove to his office, the marketing firm where he'd spent more evenings than he had at home these last 2 years. I remembered how proud he'd been the day he landed the job. "This is it, Orchid," he'd said, eyes alight. "The big league, the future." Now the thought of him sitting in that glass tower scheming his escape twisted my stomach. The receptionist recognized me instantly. Her polite smile faltered when I asked to see Isaac. She fidgeted with her pen. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Last Name," she said softly. "Isaac isn't here. When will he be back?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Her eyes darted away. He resigned last week." My legs nearly gave out. I gripped the counter, knuckles white. "That's impossible," I whispered. "He was here Monday." She shook her head, sympathy in her eyes. "He submitted his resignation 2 weeks ago. Yesterday was his last day. 2 weeks. While I'd been packing Finn's lunches, folding his tiny socks, scheduling his playdates, Isaac had been orchestrating his escape with clockwork precision. I thanked her somehow, my voice hollow, and stumbled out to the parking garage. I sat in my car, hands shaking so hard I could barely hold my phone. I dialed Marcus, Isaac's closest friend from college. He answered cautiously. "Hey, Orchid." The tone of his voice told me everything before he spoke. "You knew," I said, my words sharp. "You knew he was leaving."
Silence stretched, heavy and damning. Finally, Marcus sighed. "He made me promise not to say anything. Said he needed a clean break." "Clean break?" My voice rose, trembling with rage. He abandoned his son. He emptied our savings. He didn't just leave me, Marcus. He left us. Marcus's silence told me he hadn't known the full extent. I didn't know about the money, he admitted, voice thick with guilt. That's messed up, Orchid. He stopped. I thought he just needed to start over. Start over? The words burned in my throat. With Abigail? Another pause, then quietly. Yeah, with her. The betrayal seared anew, hot and sharp. I ended the call, unable to hear more. My hand trembled so violently I nearly dropped the phone. Isaac hadn't just slipped away in the night. He'd planned it, resigned, transferred money, booked flights. And the worst part? He'd confided in Marcus, his friend, while I slept beside him, dreaming of stability that no longer existed. I sat in that car for what felt like hours, numb, watching strangers go about their ordinary lives. People hustled into the building, grabbed coffees, checked watches. Their worlds were intact, while mine lay in ruins at my feet. When I finally drove home, exhaustion weighed heavy on me. Finn was waiting, his little arms wrapping around my legs the moment I stepped inside. Pizza tonight? He asked, hope shining in his eyes. I scooped him up, pressing my face into his hair, inhaling the scent of crayons and soap. Yes, baby, pizza tonight. Later, when Finn was tucked in bed, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the stack of papers from Isaac's desk, receipts, tax forms, notes scribbled in his tidy block letters. I traced my fingers over his handwriting, once so familiar, now feeling like the scrawl of a stranger. How long had he been planning this? How many nights had he sat at this very desk, drafting our destruction, while I believed we were still a team? I opened my laptop again, scrolling through our joint email account. There it was, confirmation. A flight itinerary to Lisbon, booked 3 weeks ago. One passenger, Isaac, last name. Destination, Humberto Delgado Airport. My chest constricted, the walls of the apartment closing in. He hadn't just abandoned us, he'd erased us. And as I sat in the dim kitchen light, Finn's soft breathing echoing down the hall, I made myself a promise. Isaac would not get away with this. He had underestimated me. He thought I would crumble, but he didn't know the strength that comes from being a mother. He had chosen lies. I would choose truth, and I would fight.
The next morning, the world mocked me with its ordinariness. The kettle hissed for tea, thin, clattered toy dinosaurs across the kitchen floor, and sunlight leaked through the blinds as though betrayal wasn't sitting at our table. I went through the motions, packing Finn's snack, tying his shoes, forcing smiles, but inside, I was brittle glass, one more shock away from shattering. After dropping him at daycare, I drove home on autopilot. My chest tightened as I climbed the stairs to our apartment. The hallway smelled faintly of floor polish and someone else's dinner from the night before. On the doormat, a thick envelope lay waiting, cream-colored, stamped with the kind of authority that steals your breath before you even touch it. I froze. My name, typed neatly on the front, glared up at me. Orchid, last name, confidential, legal documents. My hands shook as I bent down. For a moment, I considered leaving it there, pretending I hadn't seen it. But reality doesn't bend to willful blindness. I picked it up, closed the door behind me, and sat at the kitchen table.
The seal cracked with a sound too loud for its size. Inside was a stack of papers, neatly bound, brutal in their formality. Petition for divorce. Filed last week. Filed by Isaac, last name. His new address, Lisbon, Portugal. My throat closed. I skimmed the lines, each word carving deeper. He wasn't just leaving, he was erasing. No custody sought, no visitation rights, no spousal support, no child support. It read like abandonment dressed in legalese, as if Finn were a mistake Isaac wanted deleted from his life. My stomach churned, bile rising. He hadn't simply run away. He had rewritten our story on official paper, painting himself the victim, leaving me the villain. A note from his lawyer was clipped to the front. Mr. Last name, indicates that you have sufficient savings to support yourself during this transition. As such, no financial assistance will be provided." I laughed, harsh, humorless. Sufficient savings, the very savings he had gutted. He stole the foundation from under me and then claimed I could still stand. The cruelty was surgical. I pressed my hands to my face, hot tears spilling through my fingers. Finn's laughter from last night echoed in my ears, a reminder that I couldn't collapse. Not now, not in front of him, not ever, if Isaac's lies were going to be challenged. My phone buzzed. His mother's name lit the screen. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Orchid," she snapped before I could speak. Her voice was sharp, polished like glass. "I just spoke with Isaac. He told me what you're doing." My pulse pounded. "What I'm doing? You're keeping Finn from him unless he pays you more money." The accusation hit like a slap. I gripped the phone so tightly it hurt. "He left. He emptied our savings. He filed for divorce. He's in Lisbon," she scoffed, the sound dripping with disdain. "Don't lie. He showed me your texts, your threats." My chest tightened. Texts? Threats? The realization dawned like ice water. Isaac had twisted the truth. He was spinning me into the villain, the manipulative wife holding his child hostage for money, and his mother, eager to believe the worst, swallowed it whole. I closed my eyes, the betrayal sharp as broken glass. "You don't know what he's done," I whispered. "Oh, I know exactly what he's done. He's escaping you." And then she hung up. The silence after her words was suffocating. I sat there, phone clutched in my hand, shaking. This wasn't just abandonment. It was a smear campaign. Isaac was laying the groundwork to ensure that when the dust settled, I was the monster, and he was the victim. Rage replaced the shock. For years, I had forgiven his silences, his late nights, his mother's cruel words. I had explained away every suspicion, every credit card charge, every excuse. But this was war, and I was done being the quiet, forgiving wife. That night, after Finn was asleep, I spread the papers across the table. Divorce petition, lawyer's note, bank statements showing zero balances. I took photos of everything. Documentation wasn't just evidence, it was ammunition. I opened my laptop and searched Best Divorce Attorney Boston, Child Custody Emergency Motion. The name Cecilia Hart kept surfacing, described as fierce, relentless, unflinching. I dialed her office and left a message, my voice steadier than I felt. "My husband has fled the country with our savings. He filed for divorce from Lisbon. I need help, urgently." I ended the call, exhaled, and stared at Finn's toy dinosaur lying on the table beside the papers. Its paint was chipped, its tail gnawed from when he teethed as a baby. I traced its edges, grounding myself. Isaac thought he had written the final draft of our lives, but he forgot who I was. I'd built my career on editing stories, reshaping them until they revealed the truth, and I was going to rewrite this one. He might have filed for divorce, but I was filing for justice. The night after the divorce petition arrived, sleep was a stranger I couldn't coax. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, while Finn breathed softly beside me, his small chest rising and falling like the only steady rhythm left in my life. My mind replayed Isaac's text, his mother's venomous accusations, and the sterile words of the petition until dawn painted the blinds gray. By morning, exhaustion clung to me like white clothes, but a new resolve pulsed underneath. If Isaac thought he could vanish into Lisbon and leave me with nothing but legal scraps, he underestimated me. I wasn't just going to survive this. I was going to expose him. I dropped Finn at daycare, plastered on my practice smile, kissed his cheek, and promised him pizza again tonight. He skipped away, backpack bouncing, oblivious to the war waging in the background of his childhood. I watched until he disappeared inside, then drove home, adrenaline buzzing through me like caffeine. The apartment felt like a crime scene I hadn't finished investigating. I went straight to Isaac's desk, a sleek walnut piece we bought years ago when he insisted we needed a professional look for working from home. The drawers groaned as I pulled them open, sifting through receipts, old notebooks, business cards from networking events. Nothing but clutter,
nothing but the ghosts of a man who used to share his life with me. Then, at the very bottom of the last drawer, I found it, a sealed envelope addressed in Isaac's neat block handwriting. It wasn't to me, it was to his mother.
My stomach clenched as I opened it, careful not to tear the contents. Inside was a birthday card, generic flowers embossed on the front, and a note folded in half. I unfolded it slowly, dread sharpening with every second. Thanks for the Lisbon apartment deposit. Abigail and I can't wait to show you our place. Couldn't have done this without you. Love, Isaac. The date hit me like a hammer 3 months ago. Around the same time Isaac had told me about a promotion that might involve international travel. He'd lied, straight-faced, while I packed Finn's lunches and stayed up late editing manuscripts to stretch our budget. And his mother hadn't just known, she had funded it. I snapped photos of the note, the envelope, the date. My hands shook, but not with fear. This time it was fury. Isaac hadn't acted alone. His mother had been his accomplice, quietly helping him dismantle the life we built while looking me in the eye, offering croissants and criticism. The betrayal wasn't just marital. It was generational. I called Cecilia as soon as I finished. She answered briskly, her voice sharp with purpose. Orchid, good timing. I just reviewed the petition you sent me. It's outrageous, but sadly not unusual for someone trying to run. Do you have anything we can use to prove collusion or premeditation? Yes, I said, my voice hard. A note to his mother, thanking her for paying the Lisbon apartment deposit, dated months before he left. Her silence was brief, heavy. Then, that's huge. It proves premeditation, financial collusion, and potentially fraudulent concealment of assets. Send me clear photos. We can file emergency motions today. For the first time in days, hope flickered. I emailed the photos, my chest pounding as I hit send. Cecilia's reply came within minutes. This changes everything. We'll go after child support, asset freezes, and possibly even jurisdiction orders. Hold tight. I closed the laptop, adrenaline still coursing through me, when my phone buzzed. A number I didn't recognize flashed on the screen. Against instinct, I answered. Orchid? The voice was hesitant, feminine, familiar in a way I couldn't place. This is Sophie. I used to live with Abigail. I froze. Abigail, the assistant turned mistress. Sophie, her ex-roommate. My voice sharpened. Why are you calling me? She exhaled shakily. Because you deserve to know the truth. Abigail's been bragging for months. About Lisbon, about starting fresh with Isaac, about how they'd outsmart you. She said he was stashing money in offshore accounts so you couldn't touch it. Cayman, maybe Liechtenstein, somewhere expensive to fight. The air left my lungs. Offshore accounts. Of course Isaac wouldn't just rely on one transfer. He'd hidden more, buried deeper. Sophie's words tumbled through the line. Hesitant but desperate. I didn't want to get involved, but when I heard her laughing about how easy it was to cut you out, I couldn't stay quiet. She called you baggage. Said Isaac needed to leave everything behind. Money, family, even Finn. To really be free. My stomach turned, fury mixing with nausea. Abigail, living in my husband's shadow for years, plotting with him while I played the dutiful wife. My fingers clenched around the phone. Can you testify? Write a statement? A pause. Maybe. I'm scared. Abigail can be vindictive, and Isaac, well, he's not who I thought he was either. But I'll try. For you. For Finn. Thank you. I whispered, my voice breaking. You don't know what this means. When the call ended, I sat in the silence of the apartment, the walls heavy with secrets finally cracking open. I thought of Isaac's mother holding that note in her manicured hands. I thought of Abigail sneering about baggage. And I thought of Isaac arrogant enough to believe he could abandon us and vanish into a new life untouched. Not anymore. That night, when Finn built a dinosaur fort in the living room with my parents, who had arrived like lifelines from Maine, carrying casseroles and quiet strength, I sat with Cecilia on the phone, going over Sophie's testimony and the card to Isaac's mother. Her voice was calm but fierce. We have him, Orchid. Offshore accounts, collusion, abandonment, fraud. We can bury him in this, but we need more proof. Keep looking. Every scrap matters. I hung up and glanced toward the fort, where Finn's laughter rang out, muffled under a blanket draped like a tent. My parents' voices joined in, warm, reassuring. For the first time in days, my chest loosened. Isaac thought he outmaneuvered me. He thought money, distance, and lies could erase a mother and child. But I had something stronger than any offshore account. I had the truth, and I had nothing left to lose. And that made me dangerous. The morning after Sophie's call, I woke with a rare, sharp clarity. Fear was still there. It hadn't vanished overnight, but it no longer paralyzed me. Instead, it sharpened into something like resolve. Isaac had money, distance, and a head start, but I had Finn, proof, and now an attorney who believed in me. For the first time since his text detonated my life, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I had a chance to fight back. I dropped Finn at daycare, kissed his cheek, and whispered, "Pizza tonight." It had become our code word for safety, for routine, for the illusion that life still held normalcy. He ran inside, his dinosaur backpack bouncing, leaving me with my storm. Back at the apartment, I returned to Isaac's desk. Cecilia had told me to keep digging, and I wasn't going to stop until I unearthed every secret he thought he'd buried. Tax returns, pay stubs, receipts. I'd photographed it all, but this time I noticed something I'd overlooked before. A slim USB drive taped under the bottom drawer. My pulse spiked as I peeled it free. I plugged it into my laptop, breath catching as folders popped open. Lisbon, Abigail, personal, legal drafts. My hands shook as I clicked through. There were scanned contracts, travel itineraries, even resumes Abigail had polished for him. But then, buried deep, I found something that made my blood run cold. A draft email addressed to Horizon Global, the Lisbon company that had hired him. The email wasn't finished, but it was damning. It contained lies about me, claims that I was unstable, that I had a history of depression, and that I was refusing Isaac access to his son. He planned to send it to HR, not just to excuse abandoning us, but to make me look like a liability he was escaping. And then I saw the attachments, scanned copies of my therapy notes. Notes I'd once printed out to share with him back when I thought honesty in marriage was a strength. He had kept them, weaponized them. My hand flew to my mouth. Tears blurred the screen, but I forced myself to take screenshots of everything. Evidence, ammunition, proof of the web he was spinning around me. Just as I saved the last file, my phone buzzed. Cecilia. "Orchid, you're not going to believe this," she said, her voice tight with urgency. "We just got a call from Horizon Global in Lisbon. They terminated Isaac yesterday." "What? Why?" "They said they received an email from you," she replied carefully, "from your address. It accused Isaac of fraud, threatened lawsuits, and included personal documents." My stomach dropped. "I didn't send that." "I know," she said. "The problem is, it came from your account. Whoever sent it had access to your files." The air thickened, the truth slamming into me. Isaac hadn't been the only one digging through my life. His mother had visited after he left, offering fake sympathy, sitting at this very desk. She had access. She had motive. And she had the audacity to weaponize my own documents against me. Identity fraud, collusion, conspiracy. "I didn't send it," I whispered again, more to myself than to Cecilia. "I believe you," she said firmly. "We'll file motions immediately. Judges don't take identity theft lightly." I hung up and sat frozen, staring at my laptop, the USB drive still glowing in the port. My life wasn't just unraveling, it was being rewritten by Isaac and his mother in real time. And if they succeeded, Finn and I would be branded as nothing more than collateral damage. My phone buzzed again. A new message from Isaac. "You got me fired. You vindictive bitch. Was that your plan all along, to ruin me?" I stared at the words, rage boiling through my veins. For a moment, I wanted to scream, to hurl the phone across the room. Instead, I typed back, "It wasn't me. It was your mother. Check the attachments." Those documents were in my apartment until she visited. The 3 dots of his typing mobile appeared, then vanished. Appeared again, vanished, and then silence. Minutes later, another text arrived, screenshots of his chat with her. Her words chilled me. "Once you're settled in Lisbon, we'll work on getting Finn. Orchid's depression makes her unstable. The courts will see it my way." I dropped the phone, my hands trembling. My most vulnerable moments. Those nights after Finn's birth, when the walls closed in, when I fought for air, when therapy pulled me back, were now ammunition in their arsenal. They would paint me unfit,
erase me, steal my son. But instead of breaking, the fear hardened into fire. I wasn't that fragile woman anymore. I had clawed my way out of the fog once, and I would do it again, not just for me, but for Finn. I grabbed the USB, the screenshots, the note to his mother, Sophie's testimony, all of it, and sent it to Cecilia with a single line. Burn them with this. That night, my parents watched Finn while I sat at the kitchen table, phone pressed to my ear, as Cecilia's calm voice guided me through the next steps. We're filing for emergency custody, financial freezes, and fraud charges, she said. With this evidence, the court won't just see abandonment, they'll see a conspiracy. I closed my eyes. Relief and fury tangle in my chest. He tried to erase me, I whispered. And now, Cecilia replied, her voice steel, we erase his lies. I hung up and looked toward the living room, where Finn giggled under a blanket fort with my parents. His laughter filled the apartment, pure and untouched by the ugliness brewing around us. Isaac thought he had spun a perfect web, strong enough to trap me, but he had underestimated the one thing webs can't hold forever: truth, and I was done being caught.
The day of the hearing dawned cold and metallic, the kind of Boston morning where the sky feels like steel stretched taut over the city. I dressed carefully, not in anything dramatic, but in what Cecilia advised. Navy blazer, simple blouse, hair neat, minimal makeup. We're not here to perform, she'd said. We're here to win. My parents arrived early, taking Finn to daycare so I could walk into court with both hands free. My father squeezed my shoulder before I left. You've got this, he said quietly, and I believed him. Not because I felt invincible, but because his steady voice reminded me I wasn't alone. Cecilia met me outside the courthouse, her arms full of files, her expression sharp with purpose. Isaac flew back last night. He'll be here. The words landed heavy. I hadn't seen him since that text in the daycare hallway detonated my life. Part of me dreaded it, the other part craved it. Seeing his face, forcing him to confront what he'd done. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with low voices, lawyers shuffling papers, the judge's bench looming like a stage for a play I hadn't auditioned for. When Isaac walked in, my breath caught. He looked smaller than I remembered. Thinner, his suit hanging loose at the shoulders. His once confident stride faltered under the weight of the room. But when his eyes met mine, there was still that flicker of arrogance, the belief that he could outmaneuver me. He sat across from me, his lawyer at his side, whispering urgently. I caught the way his jaw tightened when Cecilia slid a thick binder onto our table. Evidence. Orchid versus Isaac. The judge entered, stern and deliberate. This court is now in session. Cecilia rose first, her voice steady, deliberate. Your Honor, we are here today because the respondent, Isaac, last name, abandoned his wife and child, emptied their joint savings account, fled to Portugal, and attempted to erase his obligations through deceit. We will show evidence of financial fraud, collusion, and identity theft involving his mother. And we will prove that Orchid, last name, deserves full custody of their son and immediate financial protections. Isaac's lawyer objected, predictably. Dramatic language, Your Honor. My client simply sought a fresh start. The marriage was irretrievably broken. He has no intention of contesting custody and has already filed for divorce abroad. The judge's gaze was sharp, and yet he emptied joint accounts, leaving his child with no support. Isaac shifted in his seat. For once, he had no charm to hide behind. Cecilia began laying out the evidence. Screenshots of the bank transfer, $142,731 gone in a single morning. The USB files, draft emails slandering me as unstable, with stolen copies of my therapy notes. The note to his mother, thanking her for the Lisbon apartment deposit. Sophie's statement about the offshore accounts. And then the email Horizon Global had received, forged under my name, used to smear Isaac's reputation and cost him his job. The judge's gaze was sharper with each piece. Isaac's lawyer stammered objections, tried to dismiss Sophie's testimony as hearsay, the USB as unverifiable, but Cecilia was unflinching. Your Honor, the metadata confirms these files were created on Isaac's laptop.
The stolen therapy notes match those Orchid kept in her desk, which only Isaac and his mother had access to. And the forged email contains personal documents that had never left Orchid's apartment. This is a deliberate pattern of fraud, not coincidence. When Cecilia read out loud the text Isaac's mother had sent him, "Once you're settled in Lisbon, we'll work on getting Finn." Orchid's depression makes her unstable. The judge's expression hardened. He turned to Isaac. "Do you dispute that this message came from your mother?"
Isaac's face crumpled. I don't know, maybe. She was just trying to help. Help? Cecilia's voice sliced the air. By committing identity fraud? By conspiring to steal a child from his mother? The judge's gavel struck once. Enough. I've heard sufficient evidence. My breath caught. The room seemed to shrink, every sound muffled except the pounding of my heart. The judge's voice was clear, unwavering. Isaac, last name, you have abandoned your responsibilities, committed financial misconduct, and participated in a scheme to defraud both your wife and this court. Effective immediately, all of your known accounts, including those offshore, are frozen and placed under court supervision. Your passport is confiscated. You will remain in Massachusetts until these matters are resolved. Custody of your son, Finn, is granted temporarily and fully to Orchid, last name, with only supervised visitation permitted for you. Furthermore, the evidence of identity theft and conspiracy will be referred to the district attorney for investigation. I exhaled sharply, the weight of weeks lifting in a rush so sudden it left me dizzy. Isaac slumped in his chair, his bravado cracked wide open. He looked at me then, not with love, not even with anger, but with a hollow emptiness, as if he realized too late that the game he thought he was playing had rules he never understood. Cecilia touched my arm lightly. "We did it," she whispered. As I gathered my papers, I turned to meet Isaac's gaze one last time. I wasn't the broken woman he thought he could discard with a text message. I was standing, unbowed, with my son's future secured and his lies exposed. Outside the courthouse, the air tasted different, lighter. My parents waited with Finn, who ran into my arms, dinosaur backpack bouncing. I held him close, inhaling the familiar warmth of his hair. "Did you win, Mommy?" he asked, eyes wide, too young to understand courts and custody, but old enough to sense the battle. I kissed his forehead, tears stinging my eyes. "Yes, baby, we won."
The first morning in our new place, I woke before the alarm. The back bay light slid across the bedroom wall, pale and certain, and for a suspended second, I forgot the months that brought us here. The petition, the hearings, the freeze orders, the way my life had been pried open and cataloged. Then Finn rolled toward me in his new dinosaur duvet, hair sticking in every direction, and the second stretched into a smile. We were still here. We were okay. The condo wasn't large, but it was ours. Keys heavy in my palm in a way that felt like proof. Exposed bricks softened by a shag rug Finn chose. It feels like petting a mammoth. 2 street-facing windows that turn the city into a theater of passing lives. A galley kitchen that hummed when the kettle sang. I'd painted the hallway a gentle sage and set a narrow bookcase against the wall, spines turned outward like a chorus. Poetry within reach. Children's books at the bottom where small hands could choose without asking. On the door to Finn's room, we taped a cardboard sign he wrote himself, Dinosaur HQ. Inside, a green lamp made everything look like jungle dusk. His plastic stegosaurus stood guard on the windowsill, paint chipped, tail bitten, a relic from a harder year. A relic that stayed because not everything broken needs replacing. I brewed coffee. The quiet was not the kind that follows destruction. It was the kind you earn after rebuilding. My phone buzzed with an email from my new job. Senior editor, literature and narrative nonfiction. Flexible schedule. The subject line read, "Welcome week, final details." I stared at it, laughing softly, feeling the symmetry. I had spent months editing the chaos of my life into something legible. Now I would return to editing stories I didn't have to survive to tell. Finn patted in, feet whispering over the rug. "Mommy," he said, voice scratchy with sleep, "do we still live here today?" The question was so 5-year-old, so exact, that I knelt to his height and pressed my forehead to his. "Yes," I said, "we live here today and tomorrow and as many days as we want." Over oatmeal, he told me his plan to teach the triceratops to swim. He asked if Nana and Pop Pop would visit this weekend. They would. Maine to Boston had never felt shorter. We packed his backpack together. Snack, paper crown, the small bravery he keeps in his pockets that he calls good luck rocks. Before we left, he paused at the front door and turned back. "I like this home," he said. "It doesn't have the scary shadows." "Neither do I thought. And locked up.
The legal calendar had shifted from daily alarms to scheduled check-ins. After the hearing, a forensic accountant followed the threads Cecilia had gathered. USB metadata, emails, the note to Isaac's mother, and tugged until hidden accounts surfaced. Funds in the Caymans, another in Liechtenstein, a third that fancied itself invisible simply because it was boring and domestic. The court froze them all and, with a crisp stamp, allocated what was ours. Child support was ordered, indexed to Isaac's future income with language that anticipated clever escapes. The DA opened a file on identity theft and conspiracy. The words looked cold on paper. They felt, finally, fair. Isaac's mother called once after the referral. No threat this time, just an exhausted performance of innocence. "I never meant harm," she said, as if intent were retroactive absolution. I listened without speaking, then told her she could speak to my attorney. She hung up. In certain circles, those that trade in croissants and contempt, her sudden absence from charity boards was treated like weather. Unfortunate, surprising. Nobody's fault. The sky does what it wants. Truth moves slowly through such atmospheres. But it moves. Abigail returned to Lisbon under the terms Cecilia negotiated. Her sworn statements threaded together financial transfers and a timeline she had once mistaken for romance. I didn't hate her. It startled me to discover this. Hate requires a constant expenditure of energy, and I had redirected mine. When Sophie texted to say she'd started dating someone kind, I sent 3 heart emojis and meant all of them. Isaac saw Finn twice that first month, supervised at a family center with murals of sunflowers and trains. He arrived late. Both times. He sat in the tiny chair with the resignation of a man surprised to discover consequences are not metaphors. He did not look at me. He offered Finn a robot kit and a box of sugar cereal. The gifts of a father who never understood that presence is the only present that counts. Finn played, curious but cautious, the way children audition safety with their whole bodies. When the hour ended, he hugged me in the doorway and whispered, "We can go home now." And I nodded because we could. Cecilia told me not to narrate hope onto his father's face. And not to narrate doom either. "Document, don't decorate," she said. "That's our job now." It was advice that fit my old muscle memory so well I wanted to print it on a mug. I filed my notes after each visit. Neutral, complete. Some days, neutrality tasted like freedom. Some days like restraint. Both were useful. I kept therapy, not as triage anymore, but as training. We traced the old terrain, the fog after Finn's birth, the skill of pretending I wasn't drowning because naming it felt disloyal to joy. We made new maps. My therapist asked me to list 10 signs I now recognize as exits rather than drafts. I wrote them with a pen that didn't shake. Phones flipped face down, emergencies that multiply around one person, jokes that require you to stand too far from yourself to laugh. I added one at the end. Anyone who tells you your softness is a liability has never seen you fight. At night, when Finn slept, I read manuscripts again. Voices that stuttered and soared, sentences that needed coaxing to reveal the music they were hoarding. I felt the old thrill return, the sacred midwifery of pulling a true thing through the tangle. I sent long editorial letters, with kindness and knives in equal measure, and the writers thanked me for both. One emailed back, "You found the story I meant, and then helped me earn it." I tucked the sentence behind my ribs. It described more than a book. On Saturdays, we made pancakes that tasted mostly like vanilla because Finn trusted me with the bottle. On Sundays, we visited the public garden and said good morning to the swan boats, even when they were covered and sleeping. We collected leaves and taped them to printer paper and called it science.
We learned the names of doormen on our block. We learned which bakery slips an extra croissant to children who say please. We learned I could carry groceries, plus a scooter, plus a wriggling 5-year-old up 3 flights without dropping any of it, because practice makes strength. Some evenings my father called and said nothing for a moment, letting the silence sit the way only men who respect quiet can. Then he'd tell me about the garden, or weather over the bay, or the puzzle he and my mother were losing on purpose to each other. "Come up when you can," he'd say. "Bring the boy. We'll tire him with chores." We did. Finn fed chickens who were scandalized by his dinosaur roars and came back to the city smelling like hay and victory. I don't pretend there weren't nights when grief ambushed me with perfect recall. The bodega hot chocolate, the lilies on my desk, the balcony confession that was just a smokescreen for leaving. Grief is not a villain. It's a historian. It records. It also fades. Not because we forget, but because new days keep being born and insist on being lived. One of those days in late spring, we were late for school because Finn insisted on wearing the cape my mother sewed. On the stoop, he spun until he was dizzy, cape flaring, cheeks bright with the kind of happiness that makes strangers smile at corners of their mouths. "Super Thin to the rescue," he announced, then considered. "Super Orchid, too." The promotion of my first name to superhero status made me laugh so hard I had to sit down. We walked hand in hand to the tea, and he asked, as he sometimes does, "Will Daddy come with us sometime?" The question landed gently. It no longer cut. I squeezed his fingers. "Maybe one day," I said, the truth as we had it. "But either way, you and I, we've got each other." He nodded like a man concluding a deal. "And Nana, and Pop, and the lady at the bakery who gives the sugar thing." I agreed to all parties. At work, a debut author brought me a bag of lemons from her backyard, and a fear that her book was not the book she meant to write. We sat on the office couch with the window cracked to let in the hum of the city, and I asked her who she was protecting in her current draft. She looked at the floor and said, "An old version of me." We cut those pages with tenderness. Later, she emailed, "Thank you for letting me be brave in black and white. Editing is often permission." One evening, months after the ruling, a letter arrived addressed to me in Isaac's old handwriting. My pulse skittered, but did not soar. Inside was an apology that neither asked for nor promised anything. It was tidy, like a hotel bed. It acknowledged money, courts, failures, fear. It did not acknowledge love. I put it in a folder labeled legal, misc. I did not feed it to the story machine. Some things are not chapters. They are footnotes. On the anniversary of the text that shattered us, I took Finn for ice cream after school. We sat on a bench and let chocolate drip without apology. I watched him negotiate with gravity and sprinkles and felt a stretch of gratitude so large I could have stepped inside it and lived there. The city thrummed, indifferent and kind. A breeze lifted the small hairs at his temple. He leaned against me, sticky and content. "This is a good day," he declared. It was. On the way home, I bought a single lily from the bodega and put it in a glass by the window, not as a relic, as a reclamation. The room smelled faintly sweet, the way certain victories do. That night, after stories, 2 pages, 3, then 5, because I did the dinosaur voice, Finn fell asleep with his palm open, like he was offering the day back to the dark. I stood in the doorframe and let the quiet settle. In the kitchen, my laptop blinked awake, a manuscript waiting for me to listen to. I sat down, flexed my hands, and read the first sentence twice out of respect. "There is a myth that resilience is granite, all sharp planes and permanence. Mine is river. It carved and widened and parried what tried to drown me until the water learned my name. I am not who I was the morning in the daycare hallway when a text turned the ground to splinters. I am not who I was in the courtroom when the judge said frozen and custody, and my knees remembered the word mercy. I am the woman who kept lists until the lists became ladders. I am the mother who made pizza into a password for safety. I am the editor who cut what did not serve the truth and kept what did. If you ask me now for one sentence that holds our story, I would offer this: he tried to disappear us, and we learned to appear for ourselves. Tomorrow, we will make pancakes that taste mostly like vanilla again. Tomorrow, Finn will jump from the last stair and shout the names of dinosaurs that never met us and somehow still saved us. Tomorrow, I will walk to work past the swan boats and think about how the city keeps promising itself to anyone stubborn enough to ask. Tonight, I turn a page and begin again. From the moment her world shattered in that daycare hallway to the final gavel in the courtroom, Orchid proved that resilience can rise from the deepest betrayal. Her story is more than heartbreak. It's a reminder that truth and courage can't be stolen. If this journey moved you, don't forget to subscribe, share this video with a friend, and drop a comment below with your thoughts. Until next time, remember, every ending can be the start of a stronger chapter.